Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome back to Houselights, where we have been painstakingly animated for the next hour or so to talk about a landmark film that everybody loves about as we kick off an examination of Henry Selick's career with the House of Selick. So not Tom Selleck, Henry Selick, known for all of his stop motion animation work, and the landmark film, which has become a cultural juggernaut, The Nightmare Before Christmas, alternatively known as Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, but we'll leave that part of the discussion for later. I am joined by the stop motion heads of Mr. Darren Moser and Mr. Tristan Riddell, who will have their heads replaced a painstaking 1,000 times during the course of this podcast. Gentlemen, how are you, and can you express it in song?
Yes, but only with a different voice.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. Tristan, how about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. When you think about Henry Selick, you immediately think Nightmare Before Christmas. You think about all the innovation that happened on this movie and how it's carried forward in stop motion animation. And while, stop motion isn't all over the place, it's coveted and revered whenever it's actually done with very little cheats. And this was definitely one that had very little cheats. Like, I think Selick himself says this was 99.9% handmade. And I can't wait to talk about it.
And I think that before we get into all of our notes about it and all of our discussion about it, I want to say that it's yet another in a long string of films that was released at just the wrong time for award season because it went up against Jurassic Park for Best Visual Effects. And oopsie, there's no way you're going to beat Jurassic Park. Yeah. So sorry about that one, Mr. Selick, but I'd say that despite the film coming out and being classified initially as a modest success, obviously it's gone on and it's just become one of those cultural touchstone things. I know that I saw it originally in the movie theater. I felt very uncomfortable because I was the only person in my party, meaning I was alone, and everybody else there was there with their kids. And I kind of had to sit there. You were the only
adult single male.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And I made sure there was a wide swath around me, and I made absolutely no sudden movements whatsoever because I have a feeling that moms would have jumped on me and beaten me to death. But Darren, did you see this in the movie theater, or was this one that you encountered for the first time on video?
On video, but not Blockbuster. This was another cult classic from camp, as I've said in a few others, like what was that? Princess Bride and a few other films. That was definitely a way that many new films were exposed to me. And this one, man, we were singing the songs all summer long. People really got into Nightmare Before Christmas and I see why, because it's got a lot of really good characters, and it's, nowadays we don't mind watching it because it fits in that Halloween to the last 3 months of the year, basically. You're like, it doubles as a Christmas movie and a Halloween movie at the same time. A little more one than the other, but it's definitely a staple amongst our house. The kids love it. They love singing the songs. My son is dressed as Jack a couple of Halloweens at a time. So, and now I think they even have Jack and Sally at Disneyland as full on meet and greet characters, which is really cool.
Yes, I know that over in California, they also do up the Haunted Mansion with Nightmare Before Christmas materials.
That
has never materialized in Florida that I'm aware of, which is kind of bogus, but whatever. It's fine, guys. Go ahead and hoard them over there in California.
We get all the good stuff. We get walking droids. We get Jack and Sally. I'm sorry. We're the OG.
Yeah, well, we get Sunburn, so top that one. Tristan, was this one that a wee Tristan was taken to the theater to go see this with the family, or was this one that was a date night for Mr. and Mrs. Riddell and they ran home and told you that you had to see it?
This one was like, we saw the trailer for it and my mom looked at me like, oh, and we went and saw it as soon as it came out, just she and I was 7 at the time when this came out. And it was, my mother has always loved, she's had a soft spot for the macabre. And so when she saw something in mainstream film, especially coming out from Touchstone/Disney, she's like, oh, cool, this is something that we can share. This is something I can share with my 7-year-old. Like, this is a 7-year-old's level of macabre. And,
Yes.
And so I was just enamored with it from 1993 onward. I've probably watched it at least once, most likely twice a year since 1993.
Yeah, to go back to
yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to walk over you there.
No.
You said it once, at least twice. I want to go back to that because it's very rare. Like, it's very rare to find a film that plays well in two different holidays. Like, you can watch it for Halloween, you can watch it for Christmas, and so it's open season in the last quarter of every year. And you can go ahead and have an excuse to rewatch it. But I've also found that this movie, and this is from an experience with my father, my dad loved this so much that he kept a cassette tape of the soundtrack and he would listen to it year round. He would just listen to it year round. And Darren, you had mentioned, everybody learned the songs and everything. Do you ever find yourself dipping into the Nightmare Before Christmas well before the season? Like, is this something where it could be something to pick up the spirits when maybe July is going on a little too long?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's definitely those late summer where you're like, it's hot. I want to pretend it's Christmas right now. And you start putting on, if I just crank the AC enough and play music, then I'll believe that it's December for half an hour. It's, again, very catchy. We'll often play it driving somewhere in the car. This is Halloween. It's just so easy to recite and recall. There are other great songs in this movie, but I think that's definitely the standout one for us.
Yeah, it definitely.
And then I
is.
go to Disneyland and I enjoy it, for months at a time. It's great.
Well, always nice. Tristan will never know the joy of that. That's for certain. But the soundtrack in specific, this is one of those ones where that one piece of music, when What's This kicks off, became like the standard trailer music for the longest time. And so, Tristan, I'll ask you, when you hear What's This kick off after Jack has fallen into the snow and you hear just the instrumental part of it, do you also hear Dan LaFontaine in your head going, "This Christmas, Walt Disney presents," and then just whatever the film is after it?
Not specifically. I hate to. I really wanted to say yes and
You
do
weirdo.
a yes and tell the story, but no, I don't. I really don't. It's pretty much just when I hear those bars, I just think about that song. One thing about the music that I want to talk about is I'm minored in theater, and my theater professor in college really wanted me to audition for the upcoming musical. It doesn't matter what the musical was. And I told him, I was like, I can't sing. So no. He's like, no. He's like this. He complimented me on my voice. He says, you have a really great voice. I don't believe that you can't sing. And I was like, well, I can't. And he's like, just audition, just sing. And like, and we'll get down to it. And so I chose Jack's Lament to sing for my audition song. And I had to have like an earbud in so I could hear it. And so it sounds like I'm doing it a cappella, even though I'm the only one that can hear the music. And then halfway through the song, he's like, thank you, Tristan. Thank you so much for auditioning. You have proven yourself right. I appreciate your time.
Credit for not getting you cast in the entire thing and then regretting it halfway through, because that happens from time to time as well. And in terms of regret, what I want to ask is, do either of you think that Burton regrets not helming this in some way, or does he regret not being more directly involved in it? Because while we sit there and we make the jokes about how Selick directed Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, at the same time, it's got to be somewhat annoying for a producer director like Burton to basically get the credit for the work that he didn't do. Like, that's got to be sort of an odd feeling for people to come up and be like, oh, I love The Nightmare Before Christmas. And it's like, well, great, thanks. I just made sure the guy showed up and did what he was supposed to do. Do you think that grates on him at all?
On Tim Burton for not being able to direct? I think so. I mean, because he wanted to direct it. He wanted to. But he said that the only reason why he didn't is because he didn't have time. He was doing Batman. He was making Batman Returns and doing pre-production work for Ed Wood. There's just no physical way that he could do Nightmare Before Christmas because it took 3 years to make Nightmare Before Christmas in 20 sound stages and with hundreds of workers. And they would make 14 seconds a week, something like that. And I mean, that's grueling work. And from Henry Selick's point of view, or at least from his perspective, he said that Tim Burton he came over to production over the course of 3 years, maybe 4 or 5 times, never spending more than a day or two each time. So over the course of 3 years, that's not that much. But from Tim Burton's perspective, he says, oh, no, this movie is mine. Like I made the characters. It's done in my style. I produced it. I came up with the story. Like I got the rights from Disney, and everything like that. And like, he's like, yeah, from a executive producer's perspective, he's like, this is my story. This is in my style. I produced it. There's a reason why, and this is me speaking, there's a reason why executive producers get the Oscar for Best Picture and the directors don't, like that kind of thing. So he feels like he owns it. Selick is the one saying, well, I did the work.
Make it.
Like that kind of thing. And so it is rough. It is rough because unless you're a film nerd, most people are like, oh yeah, Tim Burton, because Selick worked really, really hard to make it look like a Tim Burton film. Like he took it on the chin for that one. He made it look like a Tim Burton film.
Yeah, I have a quote by him saying, it's as though Burton laid an egg and I sat on it and hatched it. He wasn't involved in a hands-on way, but his hands are in it. It was my job to make it look like a Tim Burton film, which is no different from any of my other films. So yeah, it's an interesting, and this is also like 93. So Spielberg's already, I know it feels like I'm changing gears massively, but I want to say we've already kind of moved into this era of named known directors is where I'm going. Like Spielberg in the late 70s and like George Lucas. Now you're starting to go for directors, for, Wes Anderson, like all these kinds of things. So I can see the marketing angle of, let's put Tim Burton's name on it. I mean, at this point he had done, other work. I don't have his filmography in front of me, but like things like,
Batman is what got him to make this movie.
Oh yeah. There you go. Right there. Batman. If you saw Batman, you'll love Jack. But no, I could see that angle, but I could also see, Harry being like, yeah, I mean, if you're not a film major, you may not know that the general populace does not know that he directed this movie. It just does not sink in.
I think what's difficult about this one is when you look at something like, say, I don't know, anything else you want to pull out, there are executive producers who are really, really involved, or they hire a director because they're like, go out and make the movie I tell you to make. Whereas this, I will go ahead and make the statement, and Mr. Burton can get mad at me all that he wants to. I don't think this happens as well with Tim Burton directing it. When you look at the dedication necessary and the technical skill and proficiency necessary to make a movie like this, Tim Burton has nothing else in his body of work that approaches the exacting detail necessary for this. If this was just, and forgive me for saying just, but if this were an animated feature in the sense that you had a team of animators drawing things like old school Disney, I can see Tim Burton directing that. If you have anything else like a blend of live action and animation, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I can see Tim Burton directing that. I cannot see Tim Burton making this film. This is the work of an incredibly dedicated craftsman who knows the process inside and out, to the point where he can innovate and his team can innovate, and they trust him to make sure that the right decisions are being made. I see nothing in Burton's filmography that indicates he could ever make this movie.
Well, I mean, you get Corpse Bride, which is stop motion animation directed by Burton, which has a tenth of the charm that Nightmare Before Christmas does, as a tenth of the homemade feel and the tactile nature of the world. And it just feels like a lesser attempt at Nightmare. Corpse Bride comes around, I feel, because he didn't get to direct Nightmare Before Christmas, because he didn't get that glory of saying I was the director and the producer and the writer. It was I was the producer and the writer, and actually, he didn't even write it alone. I mean, like Danny Elfman's girlfriend Caroline Thompson, Caroline Thompson, did a big portion of the writing, and she gets very much overlooked for her contributions to the picture.
Absolutely does. Absolutely. Her name never comes up. It's kind of a crime.
You get Tim Burton, you get Henry Selick if you're lucky, and you get Danny Elfman. So you mainly get Burton and Elfman. You never get you rarely get Selick. You never get Thompson. And so, I think what I'm saying is that Corpse Bride has some nice merchandise, just because like there are certain characters that look pretty cool.
But it
has Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter. But it came and left. It has no lasting power. This came in '93. Didn't do so well in its release. They kind of fumbled the marketing, but then now you go into a hot topic and you're just slapped in the face by Nightmare Before Christmas.
But the thing is, I want to hit on that because it is regarded as having been a quote unquote modest success when it comes out. But it made $91.5 million, which $100 million used to be the benchmark for Blockbuster. It made $91.5 million off of a budget of 24. And the only thing I can possibly think is the reason it's regarded as a quote unquote modest hit is because it's coming out during the Disney animation domination block of Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin and Lion King and all of this sort of stuff. And so that's why it's regarded as this, well, it didn't do what we wanted. It took them 3 years and they couldn't give us $500 million. Come on, guys. But this is the one animated feature from that time period where when it landed, there was this, I remember from my perspective, in my age range, which is older than you two, gents, this landed a little cleaner with the people who were already aging out of the Disney target demo of that time. It's not to say that we didn't love Lion King. I love Lion King. Still cry at the opening.
It's like
of
your
Lion
older
King.
brother.
Beauty and the Beast is one of my favorite movies.
It's a little darker movie. Yeah. It's like, oh, I want to watch that.
My dad didn't play the Lion King soundtrack all year long. So, and I hate to break it to everybody, but my dad was older than I was. And so it's I think that there is a more, and Darren, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but there's a more cross-generational aspect to this than some of the Disney heyday stuff that came out back then. When I saw it come out, it landed with everybody. There wasn't a single person I knew who saw this who said, yeah, it's okay. Everybody went nuts for it. And so it's one of those things where, do you think it deserves to be known as a mediocre hit? Or do you think it's one of those ones where it was actually a big hit, but it just got lost in the shuffle?
I wouldn't say lost in the shuffle. Nightmare feels like if it finds its people, if you're the kind of person not that it's not applicable as a mass market movie, because it is, but it's also different than like you're saying, those 90s Disney movies that are, we're going to aim for the little girl or the little boy, and everyone's going to love it. It's got the catchy song. It's, the kiss at the end or whatever, it's a formula. This one was kind of anti-formula, something different. And so, if you were that kind of person that loved this stuff, you soaked it up. One last thing I wanted to say about Corpse Bride before we moved on is just the year. So that's an 2005. So that's over 10 years after this movie. So all that to say is the technology that had been pioneered in this is used in that movie is riding this coattails for sure. If Nightmare didn't exist, I don't see Tim Burton in 2005 just birthing this type of animation. He had to stand on the stones that were laid by Nightmare. But no, it's so interesting. I mean, I feel like often when we look back at box office numbers and things like that, it's just one data point of what it was. Often we're either not accounting for inflation, or we're not accounting for what was domestic versus, overseas. We're like, oh, well, it made 3 times its budget. Yeah, but a fourth of that was local, and that's what everybody looks at. So I think the real mark is once they figured out where to plug it in that Disney mindset, in the parks, in the attractions. Like you said, you can't go into any hot topic and not see Nightmare Before Christmas. There's whole stores just dedicated to this thing. It resonates. It resonates much more than anything in its same demographic.
Now, because of that resonance, it is somewhat surprising that there has not been a sequel to this. And Disney talked openly about making a sequel. Apparently, while I think Henry Selick is the only one that pulls this off at the time, apparently Tim Burton helped kill that idea, thank goodness. And a lot of people would feel that this is one of those leave it alone movies. Don't reboot it, don't remake it. It's perfect the way that it is. However, very recently, in just this month apparently, Henry Selick said that he would be open to the idea of doing a prequel, telling the story of how Jack became the king of Pumpkin Town.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the Pumpkin King of Halloween Town. Sorry, it's a lot of words to keep straight in my brain.
Oh my God, you just lost so many nerd points just then. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, okay, well, I care. So, Tristan,
is
if
he
they were to
assuming in the
announce
same
a
style? That's my only question. Is it in the same style or?
I don't know. I would presume in the same style.
I think Disney is pitching CG and Selick is sticking to his gun, saying if I do it, it would be handmade.
Yeah, well, I know in 2002, Disney wanted to use computer animation, and I would be shocked if Selick was willing to do anything besides the stop motion, because it would feel like a betrayal. Wouldn't you agree, Tristan? It would feel like a betrayal to change the style of anything that came afterward.
Yeah, either leave it alone or do. I'm kind of the opinion where, okay, so Toy Story 3 ended the franchise, in my opinion, in the best possible way. It's the perpetual motion of birth and death and rebirth and everything like that through the eyes of a new child. And it ended perfectly, but then they're like, no, we're going to get greedy because we can still make money out of this. So we're going to come out with Toy Story 4. The more I watch Toy Story 4, it's fine, but it's not very good. The first time I watched it, I was just like, this is completely unneeded. But then they made some shorts along the way. And to me, I'm like, that's kind of where the franchise should go. I know that there's no money in it, but they should test the waters with a Nightmare Before Christmas short. Make it 5 minutes, make it stop motion. And if people just lose their minds over it,
and
then maybe we can talk about a prequel.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Darren? I'm sorry.
I'll just say they will. They will lose their minds.
Yeah.
And I think it's not even just a style if you change it to CG. It's a different medium. It's like, I'm trying to think of other examples, but we all know other things that have been like 2D and changed to 3D animation, and it just doesn't connect in the same way. I honestly feel if you kept it in stop motion, the technology has advanced so much since 93. It is going to look different. It's going to be smoother. It's going to move. You're going to be able to do more with it. It's not going to look like 90s stop motion, but if you keep it as far as the visual look, like the actual pieces, I think that will still translate. It's going to look good and better, as it should. I don't want it to look like, let's animate it on 2s or whatever to make it look like the 90s. Like, no, make it look really nice. Like, pull out all the stops of all the technology that's changed and advanced since then, but throw it at these characters with the right story and you're gold.
Well, I definitely think they would want to take less than 3 years to make something if they made it this time. They would definitely at least lean on the technology that would make it a 1-year production timeline, because 3 years on unless they can get James Cameron's Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas, you can't take that long to make a film anymore. It's one of those things, though, where I would say that the ultimate test for whether you should do the sequel by this point, because it's been so many years, or whether you should do a prequel, or whether you should do anything like that, or whether there's anything to be updated about the look, is this time when I watched it with my youngest, and she's seen it before, but she doesn't notice the difference. Like, she's not sitting there going, oh, well, this looks like it was 30 years ago, guys. I don't know how I feel about this. It just works for kids still. So in a sense, I'm inclined to steer completely away from the idea of a sequel, because you've got the books, you've got the comics, you've got the manga even, you've got toys and
video
games, you've got stuff going on at Disneyland, you've got concerts, you've got all of this beloved stuff. At this point, it's almost like discussing a remake of It's a Wonderful Life. No, this has ossified. This is in the cultural zeitgeist. Walk away clean. You missed your opportunity. If you were going to make a sequel to this, it was in the early 2000s. It didn't happen. Walk away. Just be happy with the fact that you have something that came out in the 90s that's like a modern day Snow White. You don't need to touch it. You can leave it the way that it is. Unless, of course, you're going to do a live action adaptation. And Tristan, why do you support a live action adaptation of The Nightmare Before Christmas?
Just so I can get my cosplay just right.
Ooh, fair point. Fair point. I like it.
But the one thing that did make this so unique. I mean, we're talking about how, the animation style is different than what it was in the 90s. And Darren, you're completely right. I mean, you look at, like Kubo, and some other stuff.
We're going to get to it as we go through this house. Like by the time we get to Coraline, it's dramatically different, and it's only been a number of years at that point.
And then, I mean, when we get to Wendell and Wild, which came out just last year, we're going to see that modern stop motion animation, and it's interesting because part of Nightmare Before Christmas's charm is the mistakes, is the stuff that works, and like where every once in a while, like when Jack moves his head, you can see a fingerprint on the back of his head, or like the bats that are scurrying around. I actually just noticed this today, is that on the Disney Plus version, like if you watch the Apple TV digital version, when Oogie goes, "I'm the shadow in the moon" at night, and then bats start flying at the camera, you can see the strings carrying the bats. But if you watch the Disney Plus version, you can't see the strings carrying the bats. So they must have like digitally removed them at some point.
A stealth edit the way they did with the opening of Splash, where they just didn't tell anybody that they did that.
It's crap like that. And like that's neither here nor there. It's just saying that like when you see those things, like when you see the the strings on the bats, and when you see the clouds that are actually just cotton balls, and when you notice that maybe the lighting is a little off here and there, like I'm not giving it the warm glow that I'm trying to. It's just those types of things. It's like listening on vinyl.
The limitations of the time.
It makes it unique. It gives it warmth and depth and a realness to it that you can't get with a lot of modern stuff.
When I don't know, I'm not an expert on the field of stop motion animation, but I feel like the biggest change has been compositing. Is a lot more. I mean, in Kubo, the two strings, I know they did a lot where they would have full on animating in front of a green screen, and to drop them in to a shot or a place that they couldn't add them in the traditional way. So much of Nightmare it's all in camera. It's everything. I mean, there's a little bit of compositing, but not anywhere near what we get nowadays. It is all there.
When I saw that behind the scenes of Kubo, and it was all green screen, and the characters were the only thing that was real, I was like, that's cheating. Like,
and it's certainly not all, but there are a lot of some of the big sequences where, and I think
I'm sure the animators are screaming at me saying, "You don't even know," and I'm sure I'm ignorant in so many facts. But like going from, watching the behind the scenes of Nightmare Before Christmas, and then seeing 20 years later, and more, with Kubo, and it's just like, we can totally blend it with backgrounds, but like the stuff that they interact with is real. Yeah, I mean, like my gut is saying it's cheating, but then I totally understand the practicality of it. Where you can't, like John said, you can't spend 3 years on it today.
And you can, it's interesting. I feel like, let's say they're making it with modern techniques, but you have to kind of rein yourself in to still what was possible back then. And I think of like the all-present CGI camera trick, where you know what I'm talking about, like when you're watching a modern movie and the camera's flying and doing things that cameras don't do, and it takes you out of, it doesn't feel real. If they're compositing in a way but still moving the quote unquote camera in a way that was really only possible back then. It grounds it in that style. I don't expect the camera to flip and fly through objects and get too close to things. It starts to feel like, oh, well, then that's just all CG, because that's the omnipresent camera. You can stick wherever and make it do whatever you want. Losing those limitations, you don't kind of realize you're seeing it, but your brain is telling you like, this is not quite right. Then you open up your skull and scratch it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of my favorite gags. Is I love the little gags because this does fully embrace the idea that they're not. I know this seems dumb to say, but there are so many properties, even in stop motion, where they try to have this quasi reality about it, and it's like, no, this is just a fun story to be told. But in terms of like the modern stuff, what's shocking to me, in all honesty, is setting aside the question of sequels and prequels and all of those sorts of things. I'm actually stunned that we've never had some sort of adaptation on stage with this. If you can find a way to do Lion King, and I've had the good fortune of seeing the touring version of that, and it's phenomenal. And they use puppets to great extent in that production.
It's so amazing.
It's absolutely wonderful. I do not understand why they haven't done a live theater version of this. It is a musical, so it lends itself to that. And you can pad it with a couple of extra songs, the way that they do with anything that goes to musical. And The Lion King has a song in it that's actually really good and works very well with it. And I don't understand how that hasn't happened yet. I don't know why that wouldn't have happened, considering all the other all the other marketing materials and ancillary materials that have come out with this, including a Jenga set. Like, it never occurred to anybody to do this as a musical on stage. It's kind of baffling. Maybe it was Tristan's audition that completely sank that. I don't know.
I mean,
it could have been
on stage.
Like they were thinking about it around that time. I mean, this was in the mid 2000s. And so they were just like, you know what? This was so horrid. It's ruined the idea.
Possible.
Although I have to say, if it does go live action, I can't see anybody but Doug Jones playing Jack. He's got the height. He's got the build.
Oh my gosh. Holy crap. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, yeah, you have the puppeteer and stuff like that. But one interesting side note, just to be sure as well, is when it was reissued in 2006 is when that new Disney opening was put on top of it, because nobody must remember Touchstone Pictures ever again. It never really existed, everybody. It's been wiped from our collective memory. But this really is one of those ones where I struggle to find any sort of original take on things from my perspective, because there's nothing that somebody could, hasn't said that I would say and stuff like that. But one of the things, because I did actually do a little bit of reading to try to, actually put some effort into this for once, I was stunned because I had no idea that there were actual, some people had a problem with Oogie Boogie.
I
claiming
read
that there
that,
was an element of racism to his portrayal. And it absolutely blew my mind that even during production, Danny Elfman and Caroline Thompson were both concerned about that. And to find out that there was some sort of, at least according to Wikipedia, there was some sort of, issue with it raised at the time because of the character of Oogie Boogie. Like, I don't know if this is Wikipedia being Wikipedia.
I think you have to explain a little more, because Tristan's giving you the eyebrows of like,
I know Tristan's giving me
that.
the look, but on Wikipedia they talk about, they have a whole section that says accusations of racism based on Oogie Boogie. And apparently that was one of Elfman's fears. Now, the thing is, again, the reason I think this might be just Wikipedia being Wikipedia about it is because it says Elfman's predictions came true. However, and then just talks about what Henry Selick said about stuff. And it's like, there's no actual citation about anybody actually having an issue with it that's extant to 1993. But this is actually a section in Wikipedia where they talk about supposed accusations of it. Have you guys ever heard anything about that at all?
Not once.
No.
Not a single time. And
this is just some Wikipedia editor being a jerk then.
I mean, maybe I'm trying to scratch my head here, and without openly talking about racist stereotypes, I'm trying to think of what race Oogie Boogie could even represent. He's filled with he's a burlap sack filled with bugs who likes to gamble. As far as I know, I can't think of any particular ethno group where that's common.
Listen, no single burlap sack I've ever run across has even engaged me in a side bet, much less a craps game. So I don't know.
The burlap sacks that I know are hardworking and law-abiding citizens of this country. And
so is this literally just somebody inserting something into Wikipedia that's just has no basis?
You'd have to check the sources. I think you just have to check the citations.
Yeah,
because I've never heard of that. I know what I have heard of with Oogie Boogie, and specifically from Selick himself, was that Disney pushed back on a few things. There was a few things that Disney pushed back on where he was just like, oh, I totally get it. Like the first thing was, I'm the clown with the tearaway face. And he rips off his face. And apparently the original was like a skull and gore and brains and everything like that. And they're like, can you tone that down a little bit? He's like, yeah, that felt off. I'm sorry. So now it's just a black gaping hole. And it's still spooky. And then the other one
Let me throw away 3 months of work and I'll just change that edit. I mean,
and the other one was the animator's first when Sally falls for the first time. She's filled with like Frankenstein bits of flesh and bone and muscle and things like that. And that it was Selick's idea to stuff her with leaves, and I was like, "That's way more charming." She's
more like a scarecrow than Frankenstein. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and I think that's what really it's much more interesting that way. And so that's what Disney didn't request like leaves, but it was Henry's idea to do leaves. And then the other one was Oogie Boogie stripping his burlap sack and just being revealed as bugs. They pushed back on that, but Selick pushed back on their pushback and said, no, this is a big risk. We're going to see what we can do with it. We're going to see how far we can push it. And he was really worried. He said, he's like, have we gone too far? Like, is this too spooky? Is this too scary? Is this too gross? And Tim Burton didn't know about it until it was already shot. And he didn't like it. He didn't like how far they went with Oogie Boogie. But it was just like, well, we've already shot the end of the movie, so... There you go.
They're very lucky that he didn't act like Katzenberg and Eisner when they butchered Black Cauldron, because they didn't understand that that's not how animation works, and they just cut scenes out of it, saying, "Can't you just redo this?" And all the animators had to say, "What? No." And so, lucky.
Then we come full
there.
circle where you have Toy Story or like Monsters Inc. literally making bloopers. Like they still got to animate it. It's not extra footage on the cutting room floor.
So one side story about that I would like to actually talk about is when they were doing the animatics, which is something that they heavily do,
which you have to for this kind of thing.
Like you make sure the movie is locked and good to go, through animatics and voice work before you do any kind of claymation, stop motion, I should say. And so Selick's idea was to make Oogie Boogie Dr. Finkel in disguise, and that was his twist. It was like the whole time, it was Dr. Finkelstein was the one who took Santa Claus in and everything like that, and tried to ruin Jack's big day and everything like that. And the reason why he did it was because Sally chose Jack over him, and it was much more of a love interest. And he presented that animatic to Burton. Burton was so enraged at that idea that he screamed, turned around, kicked the wall, and made a hole in the wall and ran out to the parking lot and left. And so the animators and Selick cut out that portion of the wall and framed it.
It's good to know that Tim Burton has a good handle on any anger issues, considering I've never heard that story.
Maybe him and James Cameron go to the same focus group for their anger and cell phone. There's a similar cell phone staple gun to a wall that's been cut out for posterity.
Now, the thing is, though, I can understand the reaction. I don't condemn it. I mean, it's not like he kicked Henry Selick. You know,
Right.
kick the wall.
True.
Okay.
Kick the wall.
All right. You know,
He kicked the wall.
it's something to work on, but at the same
Wasn't a
time,
load-bearing wall. It's all good.
Yeah.
well,
No,
if it was
I
a
think-
load-bearing wall, he would have broken his
Oh,
foot.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know.
John, I mean, you jest, and I know it's you're half jesting, but that's what it is. It's like, yeah, you should get your anger issues under control, but it's not like you're running to cocaine and smacking people around in the office.
Or emotionally traumatizing people, you know, the way other directors in history have done.
Right.
So, you know, he clearly communicated what a problem he had with it in the best possible worst way he could have. And so, you know, so we get the movie as a result. So there you go.
I get the point. Like, I can't picture that. I think
No.
he's barely a tertiary character, and to make it's like, no, Oogie Boogie is just evil and mean and bad and represents all the things of Halloween Town that we would initially think, but they're not. They're not evil and mean and cruel. Oogie Boogie is, but every other character, they look weird, but kind of in an Addams Family weird way. Like, they're not
Right.
actually mean, or they even put it in the song. It's like, it's our, but we're not mean.
That's our
in
job, but
town.
we're not mean.
Yeah.
Well,
And that's such an important
and that's
line,
sort of the
because
thing
it's
where
so true.
Well, that's the sort of thing that I think you could have a hook for a prequel on. If you have the story of Jack becoming the Pumpkin King, there's obviously, you know, Oogie Boogie fears Jack. Jack
Did
shows
Oogie
up at the
Boogie
end.
run the town before him?
Right.
And
That
then
there
is
was
a
a prequel
quasi
comic.
interesting story to explore.
There's a prequel comic that my wife almost bought like last week because my oldest saw it at a book fair. I'm kind of mad that she didn't get it. It's called like Jack and Oogie Boogie, or Oogie Boogie's Revenge, or something like that, and it's about the two of them when they were younger trying to become the Pumpkin King of Halloween Town. Like, Oogie wants to be the Pumpkin King, Jack wants to become the Pumpkin King, and it's about them duking it out.
Well, that's a story that I'd be interested in seeing, actually. So maybe, nuts to me for saying leave it ossified. Maybe there's an argument for that type of story, but I think that a series of shorts
Right.
would be the interesting way to go about that, so that if you did not like the result, you could ignore it instead of having it be. Now, I know everybody says, well, if they make a bad sequel, you can just ignore it. But it's a little harder to ignore Halloween 5 than it is to ignore, a novelization of something. Sorry, I'm reading about the history of the making of the Halloween series right now. So Halloween 5 sprang to mind. It's also terrible. But the overall thing with this film is, it's like, I legitimately can't even imagine a person disliking this film. Like, but there is it's 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. And there's that part of me that's thinking, so there's a person who didn't love this. I really, because we're supposed to look at the work of directors and stuff like that. And this is obviously Selick's first, feature. And this is our first look at Selick. Give me something. Can you come at this with somebody saying this was too long, or somebody saying this wasn't gory enough, or somebody saying this should have been a short? Like, do either of you see that perspective at all with this film?
I
That's
honestly
a long
don't.
pause.
Yeah, like I honestly don't, and it's hard for me to separate this from nostalgia. But at the same time, I have done that in the past. Where on this show, oftentimes on this show, where I'm like, oh yeah, no, this movie's totally rooted in nostalgia, so I'm going to give it a 3. But if it wasn't rooted in nostalgia, this is much more of like a 2. Like that. That's just an example. That's not what I'm saying for Nightmare. But John, you were talking about your kids enjoying it. My eldest loves this movie, has already watched it 3 times this month because of October, and she absolutely loves it. She's 6 years old, and it's not like she complains that it's too old or it's not CGI, anything like that, because all the stuff she watches is CGI. The Barbie movies, the Mickey movies, the Gabby's Dollhouse, everything but Bluey is CGI. And so, like, she loves it. She loves the tactile nature of it. She loves Jack. She loves Sally. Just 2 hours ago, we had a coronation of Jack becoming the Pumpkin King and Sally becoming her queen. Like with the dolls that she has. yeah, it's this is a film that, you know, continues on from generation to generation. It doesn't need to be updated. There doesn't need to be a special edition where, you know, Jack blinks. It's
Well, he
yeah,
does
it's
blink, but not very often.
Oh no, Tristan was going for a very cheap Star Wars joke that I'm choosing to ignore. But now you've made me acknowledge it, Darren.
It's
so
true. Thank you,
sort
Darren.
of backfires on both of us. Thanks,
Yeah.
thanks for that.
Thanks, Darren.
But-
it made him respond to
Not
it, which
the
is all I
Ewoks.
want.
which I
Not
really
the
didn't
Ewoks.
want to do because whatever. And so we
Look,
come
when they took out
listen.
Jack's machine gun and replaced it with a walkie-talkie, it made the movie so much better. So
you know, it's interesting too, because just like Spielberg, we all know Tim Burton really directed this. So it is one of those poltergeist joke, everybody. And so I would say that at this point, especially with what you just said, Tristan, what on earth can we do now but give our star ratings? And I want to, I'm just going to put it out here this way. Is anybody giving this less than a 5?
Nope.
no,
Darren?
no, it's
All right, so that's a solid
even
5
if it's
across,
not your
across
cup
the
of
board.
tea, you have to recognize what it is and what it did and what it spawned before it, after it.
So let me propose this. With this strong opening, we have burned down and salted the earth where the wing of King Arthur was. And we are now building
So
a
true.
new structure that is the House of Selick that will sit on that ground and hopefully redeem what we wasted it on previously. So let's go ahead. Let's rejoice in this and hope that the rest of the House of Selick doesn't make me want to knock down the walls and repaint and stuff
Well,
like that.
One thing I want to talk about is that, you know, like, you know, how we mentioned before about how even the younger generation appreciates this movie. This movie has become part of my daily lexicon, whether it's verbally or within my head, where like just today, man, I see a bunny running across my yard and I go, bunny. And, or like somebody says like, oh, I need to borrow something. And I'm like, really? Whatever for? You know, like, I thought you liked Wormswort. You know, it's just, there's so many random lines in this that can be quoted and spot back. And we haven't even really talked about the beauty that is this voice cast, about how you get Danny Elfman, the man himself, is singing as Jack Skellington, and Jack sings more than he talks. You know, like there's a lot of songs in this movie. There's way more songs in this movie than there is in a normal musical. Like normally you get like 5 or 6 songs in a musical. You get 10 in this one. And you have Chris Sarandon, who does the talking voice of Jack Skellington. And they did such a good job of pairing those two together where it doesn't feel like completely different people. And Catherine O'Hara, the one and only Catherine O'Hara, who plays Sally in Shock. She's just glorious. And she did a live performance, I think in 2013, of Sally's song. And the crowd just lost it. Like just her walking on the stage, people were acting like it was a Beatles concert. And, you know, Glenn Shaddix as the mayor, you know, I love the story of how he got it. Like, so like he's friends with Burton, you know, like I think they met. I don't know if they met on the set of Beetlejuice or if previously, but he was like, Glenn said that he was in Tim Burton's pool, just hanging out with a bunch of friends. And Burton was in a adjoining hot tub. And Burton said, hey, I'm doing a movie called Nightmare Before Christmas. And he's like, yeah, you talked about that. It's like, you have a pretty booming voice. You want to be the mayor? It's like, sure. And that was it. That's all it was.
Never say it's not who you know in Hollywood, because my lord.
Right.
And even Greg Proops is in it. Friggin' Greg Proops from Whose Line Is It Anyway? Plays the Harlequin demon, the devil, and the sax player. And there's just, you have Carmen Twilly, Randy Crenshaw, Paul Rubens is Locke, and Ken Page is Oogie Boogie, and it's just William Hickney. This voice cast is so phenomenal. It's beautiful. And like Danny Elfman said that this was the easiest score and songs that he's ever had to write for a movie because it just came to him. He didn't even have a script yet, and he wrote this music because Burton was just talking about the movie and, you know, doing character sketches and says, this is what they look like and this is kind of what I want them to do. He's like, all right. And then 3 days later, he'd have a song. And his girlfriend, Caroline Thompson, was so imbued with with what Danny Elfman was going through, that she's just like, yeah, I could write this, because the original writer had to get kicked off because of cocaine addiction. And so she's like, I don't like cocaine and I know this music. So let's do this.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. And this is lightning in a bottle. Everybody's firing on all cylinders. The animators, the score, the music, the singers, the vibe, the texture, the feeling when it came out. It's just, this is probably one of the handful of perfect films in cinema.
Yes.
Right
Darren,
here on Houselights.
There you go.
Tune in next week. Yeah.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think, and I'm glad you spoke on a lot of the voice actors, because I don't believe I went to it, but I know some friends who went to they had a thing at the Hollywood Bowl out here where they were playing all the songs. It was like a live version of Nightmare, and they had Paul Rubens and Catherine O'Hare and Danny Elfman there doing their parts as Lock, Shock, and Barrel, and it was amazing. You'll see the video all over the internet. But yeah, I think the truest thing you said, Tristan, this is not a 5-star because of nostalgia and rose-colored glasses. It earned it on its own merits, and I think we all agree that Henry, Selick's name should be with reverence, and everyone should know. It should be Henry Selick presents Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas on every cover, is what it really should be.
Well, Henry Selick was at least able to leverage this into a respectable career, and we'll be moving forward looking at the next film that he directed, James and the Giant Peach, which came out 3 years after this one, and we will discover whether the House of Selick continues on its tremendous opening trend here on Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.